Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranjaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavat Naistiki Shinvata Sakata Krishna Punyasravana Kirtanaha Vedyantastoya Bhadrani Vidinoti Suritsatam. Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from Canto 1, Chapter 1, verse number 19. We'll first read the verse and then synonyms. And Vayam tuna vitripyama uttama shloka vikrame yachrunvatam rasajnanam swadu swadu pade pade. Word-to-word translation. Vayam, we, tu, but, na, not, vitripyamaha, shall be at rest, uttama shloka, the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by transcendental prayers. Vikrame, adventures. Yet, which. Shrunvata, by continuous hearing. Rasa, humor. Jnanam, those who are conversant with. Swadu, relishing. Swadu, palatable. Pade, pade, at every step. Translation. We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with him relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment. Purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami. There is a great difference between the mundane stories, fiction, or history, and transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The histories of the whole universe contain references to the pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord. The Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Puranas are histories of bygone ages recorded in connection with the pastimes of incarnations of the Lord, and therefore remain fresh even after repeated readings. For example, anyone may read Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam repeatedly throughout his whole life and yet find in them new light of information. Mundane news is static, whereas transcendental news is dynamic, inasmuch as the spirit is dynamic and the matter is static. Those who have developed a taste for understanding the transcendental subject matter are never tired of hearing such narrations. One is quickly satiated by mundane activities, but no one is satiated by transcendental or devotional activities. Uttama Shloka indicates that literature which is not meant for the science. Mundane literature is in the mode of darkness or ignorance, whereas transcendental literature is quite different. Transcendental literature is above the mode of darkness, and its light becomes more luminous with progressive reading and realization of the transcendental subject matter. The so-called liberated persons are never satisfied by the repetition of the words Aham Brahmasmi. Such artificial realization of the Brahman becomes hackneyed, and so to relish real pleasure, they turn to the narrations of Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who are not so fortunate turn to altruism and worldly philanthropy. This means the Mayavada philosophy is mundane, whereas the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadhati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namaha Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you, everyone. And thanks to everyone for giving this opportunity. In this, as Jagadananda Prabhu was saying yesterday, this whole week is quite auspicious, starting with Vaman Dev's appearance day, where we had the glorious opportunity to hear from His Holiness Rampad Maharaj, and continuing with that whole theme, today's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day, and then we have followed by Bhadra Purnima and Haridas Thakur's disappearance day. So quite an amazing week to be part of, kind of going through, and then what better way to than hearing Srimad Bhagavatam for this week. So this was something that I actually heard from one of the class from His Holiness Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj, with respect to the glories. Like as we are focusing on Srimad Bhagavatam, I wanted to start off some appreciation for Srimad Bhagavatam and then get into the verse that we are talking, where the sages are basically talking to Suta Goswami. So we will. I just wanted to share something that I kind of felt very unique and quite inspiring. The way how Maharaj presented for the Srimad Bhagavatam is Srimad Bhagavatam kind of, when we are coming into the devotional service, we kind of, as we all know, we kind of carry some baggage from our previous experiences, or in our usual terms we call them conditioning. So there is a lot of baggage, and there is a lot of normal understandings that we carry. And Srimad Bhagavatam is so glorious that most of the normal things, normal hierarchy things, or normal day-to-day things that we kind of think that's how things should follow, Srimad Bhagavatam breaks them. And Maharaj was presenting that many a times it is thought that high birth is important. Like that's one of the unfortunate misconception that many people have, is that high birth is important for progressing in devotional service. And we see in Srimad Bhagavatam that Vidura, who was supposed to have a low birth compared to Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, was the one who was given much more prominence in both when Krishna was interacting, and also Vidura was the one who came back to deliver Dhritarashtra. So that whole understanding of high birth is important is broken by Srimad Bhagavatam. And sometimes we hear that demigods are the more worshipable people than the demons. In most of the cases, it is true, but as we all know, the glorious demon of Vritrasura, in that case, Vritrasura is somebody who was instructing and then saying, instructing and kind of correcting what Indra was doing. So in this case, I remember once my spiritual master is Holiness Radhanand Maharaj, when he was giving a talk on Vritrasura, he ended the whole talk with this question. Like in the end, it so happens that Indra kills Vritrasura. So Maharaj ended the whole talk with a question for us to kind of ponder, and saying that who won the battle? Was it Indra or was it Vritrasura? So if you kind of think of it, Vritrasura actually won the eventual battle. So in this case, the whole understanding the demigods are more worshipable is kind of broken. And sometimes there is this understanding there's why husbands are much more worthier and worshipable than wives, and wives are supposed to follow the husband. And we see in the case of Brahmanas and the Brahmana Patnis that Brahmanas kind of got into the whole, just the ritual aspects of the Vedic sacrifices, but whereas their wives could understand what is the actual reason. And then when Krishna came, they took upon that service. And sometimes we see that king is much more worshipable than citizens. And that is broken when during the pastime of Jada Bharata, when King Rahuguna kind of starts insulting Jada Bharata. Then the moment Jada Bharata starts to speak, King Rahuguna immediately comes down from his palanquin and then pays his obeisances. So we see, like, if we get for lack of time, if we kind of have to stop it here. But if we see, there are so many of the norms that are broken, and as I was seeing that here I am without any qualifications. Also, kind of as I see in the audience, there are much more qualified devotees who can speak, but just because of the mercy of Srimad Bhagavatam and just by all of your prayers, here I am sitting, which is also kind of breaking on the norms that I think is I am sitting here and trying to share something that I feel inspired, kind of which kind of inspires me to try to read Srimad Bhagavatam on everyday basis. And one more thing that I wanted to share was this verse, which we are trying to discuss now, Vayam tu navitripyama uttama shloka vikrame yat shrunvatam rasagnanam swadu swadu pade pade. So this swadu swadu pade pade was the stanza that I if I kind of look back, was one of the first stanzas that I remember hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam. This was something that I heard in His Grace Gauranga Prabhu's class when he was talking about this verse in one of the Bhagavatam class. And I think it's been almost more than 15, 16 years, but somehow I think all of us have this experience. Sometimes we hear some class and some phrase or some stanza kind of sticks to our memory. And this was one such phrase that it just stuck to me. And then when the opportunity came for me to kind of talk on some of the most inspiring verses from me from Srimad Bhagavatam, I couldn't look beyond these words. It just kind of, as I was thinking what verse, when the opportunity came yesterday, what verse should I think of, should I share about, this was the first verse that came. And I hope, I seek all of your prayers and blessings, so I'm sure all of you are much more positioned in a way where you relish Srimad Bhagavatam much more than I could ever think of. So I take this opportunity to share something, and in that way kind of feel inspired, where I can at some point relish Srimad Bhagavatam, as they are saying swad swad pade pade, as Srila Prabhupada translates that as at every moment. May I hope someday, then by all of your prayers, I can go there. So it was kind of interesting. If you just look at the verse swad swad pade pade, it feels interesting that here are the sages who had their own plans of performing the sacrifice for almost 1,000 years, as Srila Prabhupada says. But when Suta Goswami came, as we all know, the first 5 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam are what is Srimad Bhagavatam, the glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then those are the first 3 verses, and then the 4th, 5th verse is what Vyasadev is basically setting the scene for what the sages were planning to do. And when Suta Goswami came, so verse from 6 to 18, as we are talking about the 19th verse, from verse 6 to 18 are almost for 13 verses are the verses that the sages are basically glorifying Suta Goswami. They're glorifying his qualities, they're glorifying his personality, and then they're glorifying his spiritual masters, and then they're also asking various questions. And in between them, when I was hearing again this, going back to the class from Gauranga Prabhu, which is again derived when I was trying to prepare for my class, which again is derived from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport, is when, as they were talking, sometimes it so happens when, like, it happens most of the times to me, is we have so much to share, and in having that so much to share, it so happens that we kind of rush through, which I think happens most of the times when I'm trying to present something, is we have so much. So in like for 13 verses, there was, like, it's not that they ask some simple questions. If you actually go back and look, they ask quite a deep questions, which might take for a long time to actually share. But so when they were asking those questions, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes that it came to their mind that maybe Suta Goswami could rush through what he has to share. So if you actually also look back to one of the verses from the 9th verse, I believe, in that verse, in part of their glorification, they're so happy that Suta Goswami came. One of their blessings to Suta Goswami is that may you live for many, many years, and please share. So what we relish, and taking that as one of the cue, And in this verse, when they are saying swadu swadu pade pade, they're saying like pade pade. Just repeat. I like pade pade in my colloquial language of Telugu means that just keep repeating, keep repeating, keep repeating. Like that's what we say. That we say sometimes that um, we use most of the times as in a negative way, that don't repeat it most of the times. But here the sages are using it in a positive sense where they say, please repeat it. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that in saying that pade pade, they are basically saying two things. One is just to make it, just to kind of clear up any doubts the Suta Goswami could potentially have, where he might rush through all of the things. So so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his purport says they are saying two things. One is, maybe there are other people who might be satisfied by some small narrations of what you're supposed to say, but we are not. Please just go on saying forever. And the next thing that they are saying is, when Suta Goswami appeared, they were doing something. So we all have experience sometimes when we are visiting some devotees. If we believe that they are busy, then what we do is, if we had some plan of staying for like, let's say 1 hour, and if we see that they're doing some service, or they're part of some whatever is happening in their life, then when we see that they're already engaged with something, then the first thought that comes back to our mind is, oh, maybe I shouldn't rush and then kind of prolong my stay. I'll just go back. So the sages were saying that whatever we have done till now, all the sacrifices, that whatever plan that we had, we are satisfied by it. That was our first option. We are satisfied by it. We didn't have you then, so we planned for doing that. We are now satisfied by it. Now we have time forever. So whatever you want to say, please just continue saying. And it's also interesting, when as I was contemplating more, many a times for us to kind of get some taste, we should first of all get some glimpse of it. But in this case, the sages did not, till this verse, till the 19th verse, Suta Goswami did not open his mouth, at least in Srimad Bhagavatam. He did not share anything about it. It's not that they asked a question, he repeated, he answered that, and then he asked, it's not in a chronological order. They have asked whatever number of questions that they have asked till now, and he is yet to speak. And even before he's speaking, they're saying that continue saying. They're saying like, we relish it. They relish it so much. I think in one of the classes on his Rumpad Maharaj was saying that their anticipation of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam was so much, they were almost at the end of their mats. Just by asking their questions, their anticipation of relishing the Srimad Bhagavatam rose so much that they were almost at the end of the seats. Like it so happens sometimes we are watching, like might be a kind of mundane example, but I think what I can connect to is, sometimes we are watching some cricket match which is quite tense, and then we are like almost at the TV. In the same way, the Suta Goswami, the sages of Naimisharanya was so anticipating the relishing that they were about to have from Srimad Bhagavatam, that they were almost like sitting like the edge of the chair and like, yeah, please, just continue. And it's interesting. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur again expands on this, which Prabhupada also kind of hints in his purport. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that for us to have feeling that I had enough, where in this case the sages were not having that feeling that I had enough, for us it usually happens because of three things. One is sufficiency of the quantity what we are having. Like I remember many a times, like we have, if you feel the quantity of food that, like let us say there are 10 people in the house, but the quantity of prasadam is if we believe that it's not sufficient to all the 10 people, which used to happen most of the time in my home, if my father ever felt that the quantity that my mom cooked, as per him, is not sufficient for every member of the family, then he would reduce the quantity that he'll eat, and he would say that I'm sufficient, I'm satisfied now. He would, like if his quantity was, let's say X, he would maybe eat half of it or quarter of it, and then he would say like, now I'm satisfied. But in this case, as we all know, Krishna is unlimited and so are his pastimes. So the whole question that the sufficiency of quantity would never arise. And then the next thing that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says is, one of the thing is lack of awareness of taste and lack of relishing the object. which Prabhupada quotes many a times, giving the example of Rasagulla, is sometimes if you ask, it so happens with me also, sometimes some devotees ask me, do you like something? And then I say, I don't like it. In reality, what it means is, I don't know how it tastes. So from that side, I don't like it. And then they say that, how can you answer without ever tasting it? So in this case, in this case of the sages, lack of awareness of taste and lack of relishing the object. In their case, it's not that they're hearing the Krishna Katha for the first time. It's not that case. So they already had the taste, which is the reason that they are saying that swadu swadu. We are relishing, so just go on. So even that scenario is not applicable in their case. That they are not lacking the awareness, nor are they lacking the conception of relishing the object. And we also see from the previous questions that they have asked, they know about Krishna's pastimes. They have some understanding of the Lord's pastimes and everything connected to it. So they just wanted to hear more from Suta Goswami, who has already heard from Sukadeva Goswami. So in this way, we understand that is the reason that they are asking, like, because they, like, all these 3 points, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying, there is no sufficiency of quantity. There is like unlimited quantity of Krishna's pastimes, and they are aware of the taste, and they are also aware of how relishing the taste of the Krishna Katha is. So with that understanding, because they have that understanding, they're saying that please continue. And then, as I was saying, it also kind of, if we connect back to this previous thing of the blessing that they gave to Suta Goswami, is where they were saying that may continue to live for many, many years. And in this way, they are saying, like, we are relishing whatever little amount of Krishna Katha that we know. And you came here, that it is our great fortune. And because you are here, may we relish this Krishna Katha for forever. And please continue. For whatever doubts that you have, they are kind of squashing it in the beginning. Like, they don't want to get into a scenario of, like, Suta Goswami says to some degree, and then they're like, no, we are not satisfied. Please continue. So they don't want to kind of cut the flow of Suta Goswami, where he has to think and then kind of comprise everything, and then kind of compress everything and then say it. So they're saying in the beginning itself, like, just go on without any doubts. That either if you're tired, or if you're either not relishing, they're kind of answering all the questions by just saying one line in Srimad Bhagavatam. They're saying, like, swadu swadu pade pade. And then we also hear they are saying that Suta Goswami, like the sages of Naimisharya, are saying that we are relishing this at every moment, and we will relish this for every moment. And we also hear from Krishna, where Krishna is saying this in the famous verse from Bhagavad Gita 9.2, where Krishna says, Susukam kartum avyayam. He says that this process of devotional service, which is the greatest of knowledge, is something that is joyfully performed. And as I was contemplating on this, I thought that sometimes I don't feel that way. It's not sometimes, most of the time, it's not something that I feel. It's not a joyful of process that I always feel that way. And as I was thinking, and also, as Krishna says in this verse, he says that this process is something that you can directly, like, I'll read the translation. It says this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. So Krishna is saying this process is something which is joyfully performed and has direct perception, and which I believe many of us, and I'm sure most of us can equate to, is the direct perception of the direct connection that we felt in some moments of the bhakti performance that we are doing, which kind of gives us more and more taste. But it's not that we feel that at every day or every moment, or even sometimes we're just dragging it. And Srila Prabhupada, again, going back to what Srila Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. When I hear that, I kind of, there are some statements which might be straightforward, and there are some statements which kind of could mean two things. When I always hear these are the two things that I kind of equate to. One is that Krishna consciousness is our natural propensity, as Srila Prabhupada puts it. It's the natural propensity of every soul. So it is not something that artificially we have to do something. All we have to do is take off the artificial coverings that we have. And the other thing could also mean that Krishna consciousness is something which is natural to you, but we all sometimes we hear of this phrase where we kind of it happens so famous, it's so common that fake it till we make it. And sometimes we keep on faking it. But the most important part of the phrase that I believe is making it. And if you're not focusing on just making it, as Prahlad Maharaj says in the famous words in the 7th canto when he's praying, where he says, Matirna Krishna, like the famous words of Puna Charvita Charvananam. In that famous verse, Prahlad Maharaj starts that verse saying that Matirna Krishna, one who's Mati, and Prabhupada beautifully translates Mati as not the mind or something. Srila Prabhupada translates Mati as inclination. As long as our inclination is not towards Krishna, those are when it is not there, then we are, rather than kind of trying to put in those efforts and then being present, and rather than trying to make it, those are the moments when when our mati is not on Krishna, when our mati na Krishna. And as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also very famously blesses says that whoever he used to meet, he used to say that Krishna matir astu. That's one of the phrases that Mahaprabhu used to say, that may your Krishna matir, may your inclination always be driven towards Krishna. Krishna matir astu. Like this astu is one of the famous, I think there is Shubham astu, and then it keeps coming back in many of the blessings that we hear. And Mahaprabhu used that for Krishna matir astu. As long as our inclination, when our inclination is towards Krishna, then those are the moments that we feel. When I look back, those are the moments when our inclination, when I was completely inclined towards just pleasing the devotees and pleasing the Lord, and rather than kind of focusing on what I'm going to achieve or some kind of intellectual. There are some moments where I'm just trying to understand certain things intellectually, rather than giving the foundation of keeping Krishna and Srila Prabhupada and the devotees as center. If that center is not there, and if you're trying to kind of, whenever I tried in the overall external senses of just trying to intellectually understand something, those are the moments I kind of didn't feel the mati, or like the direct perception of Krishna or the susukam. And how do we, like it so happens, like I remember when I was small, like the first time my brother ever got a phone, I'm sure like all of us remember, like when you used to have these Nokia phones which are kind of tiny. It feels like bygone ages with compared to the smartphones that we have. I remember the first time I ever asked him, like it was locked. Obviously, like I was in my 5th or 6th grade, and my brother kind of got this phone and he locked it. And I asked, like, how do you unlock it? And he said, if you lock the door with a key, how do you unlock it? I said, we use the same key. My brother said, like, the same thing. There is also a key to this unlocking of this phone. And as if you kind of take the same thing of what Prahlad Maharaj is saying, of Matir na Krishna, if we just take that na, and as Mahaprabhu is saying, Krishna Matir Astu, as long as if our inclination is towards the process of devotional service, and as Prabhupada also famously writes in the famous words of Srinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyantastoya Abhadrani Vidunoti Suhrit Satam. In the famous words, the Prabhupada writes, the taste for, like, that whole verse is basically about Srinvata Swakata Krishna. It's about hearing the glories and Punya Shravana Kirtana. It's about hearing and chanting the glories of Krishna and Krishna Katha. And in that verse, Srila Prabhupada writes that this is the basis, if I have to paraphrase, the basis for how the taste for chanting and hearing could be achieved is through the service of the Lord. And then if I request all the devotees to go back and whenever you get time to read that purport. That I felt like that was such a hope-giving purport. And Srila Prabhupada, once he says that the devotees, that service to the devotees is of paramount importance to get the taste for chanting and hearing. And then he says that Krishna, more than us, is actually waiting for us to come back. And Srila Prabhupada writes that Sri Krishna helps those who are, it's a beautiful way how Srila Prabhupada puts it. I think we are almost, I'll end it with this point, is Srila Prabhupada says that the moment Krishna sees that somebody is completely sincere, he doesn't just use sincere word. It's so beautiful how Srila Prabhupada puts it, is the moment somebody who is Krishna sees that somebody is who is completely sincere, Sri Krishna helps them in all respects. And as I think we also discussed yesterday with Govinda Mohini Mataji, where she was sharing about just being alive in Krishna consciousness. So all we have to do is just be alive in Krishna consciousness. For us to be alive in Krishna consciousness means when you are alive, you're interacting, you're actively doing something. And as Srila Prabhupada is saying in this verse, as long as we are able to serve the devotees with the foundation of Matir, Krishna Matirastu, as long as we are able to do that, then we will also, as the sages are seeing, at some day of our life, may we also be able to kind of relish this whole process of devotional service, swadu, relish. And as Srila Prabhupada kind of beautifully puts it, he doesn't just translate swadu as relishing multiple times. He says relishing and palatable. Palatable is something that we kind of happily digest. So maybe someday, in following in the footsteps of, as the sages, when they kind of, as I was saying in the beginning, when they had their own plan, and it's also beautiful, right? Like when sages were trying to, whatever the best that they could in trying to fulfill the process, the best way that they could do, then they were blessed with the association of Suta Goswami. So sometimes the best thing that we could do might not be the highest thing of devotional service, but in our circumstances that we have, they maybe that's the best thing that we do. And as long as Krishna sees that we are completely sincere in endeavors, then Sri Krishna will help us in all respects. As he blessed the sages of Naimisharanya with the presence of Suta Goswami. And the moment, and it's also interesting if you see that the moment the sages came, the moment Suta Goswami days came, they didn't say that, oh, we already have a plan of performing the sacrifice, and this is what the Vedas say. They didn't get into the whole things. They immediately said, we had enough of whatever we did. You please continue talking. And they were so intelligent and they were so present. So I pray that taking that cue from what the sages have done, I someday pray that may we also be intelligent when Sri Krishna is, as Srila Prabhupada is saying, when Sri Krishna is helping us in all respects, may we be intelligent enough to kind of grab that opportunity. And the moment we grab that opportunity, then in service to Srila Prabhupada, in service to all the Vaishnavas, in service to our Guru Varga, the moment when we do that, then obviously as Shri Radharani, who is Raseshwari, she kind of can open the key to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And once you get the taste of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is the time when we will continue, when we will also be able to say, with full heart, we will also be able to pray these words, Vayam tuna vitripyama uttama shloka vikrame, yet shrinvatam rasajnanam swadu pade pade. So I'm so sorry that I took more than 5 minutes of your time, and I hope there was something that this class has been quite inspiring for me. A lot of things for me personally to take away. I hope I hope I didn't offend any of you who are here. If there is some correction or comment that you would like to make, and if time permits, then we can talk something or we can end. If not, I think we can end. I think
there is a comment by Kelly Mataji in the chat. He made this morning class very relishable. Wish we had the kind of time that the sages have to continue to hear in discuss.
Yeah,
And how
I hope so.
blessing the Goswami, to have long life so that they can hear continuously Srimad Bhagavatam. And you mentioned about that Pade Pade meaning. Generally, I usually mean context, but here it is very nice. They're blessing to. Of course, that is not the motivation only, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, but it is very nice to hear, and they want. Yeah, it's actually it's not ending those questions or answers in a few verses itself. So they're trying to
Correct.
discuss.
Like also, if in the, I think in the 18th chapter of the first canto, when Sutta Goswami was almost ending his presentation of Parikshit Maharaj, they again bring back the topic, and then they kind of extend. So it's like it's always like a tussle between them. Like that's why I see, like, maybe I'll present to this, but then I'm not happy. So please share more. So it's also between Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. Like Parikshit, Sukadeva Goswami says something, and then Parikshit Maharaj like, no, 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 you missed. I think you missed that point. Can you please say that again? So it's like, so it's quite hope giving. Thank you, Prabhu. I think we are quite over time. If no more questions or comments.
The Prabhu Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna,
I
Prabhu.
always miss your classes, but today I at least half the way I heard. It's very
thank you.
relishing, very hope giving. But one thing, the hope giving, but one thing you mentioned is very sincerely. That's the completely sincere is the key point.
Yeah.
That's a catch 22.
Yeah. It's not just sincere. Srila Prabhupada, if you beautifully so presents, right? Like completely sincere.
Exactly. That's a
Yeah.
catch 22. But because we as a devotee, oh, Krishna is not doing this, I'm not doing that. But are we that catch 22 is a question. Thank you for that.
Thank you, bro. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
So shall we end, Prabhu?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitan